Gentlemen, how we doing today?
We're great. How about
Good?
you?
You been busy? You been out spreading the gospel of band and orchestra and choir and all the great things of music education?
Oh, yeah. Doing our thing. I think Anthony came in last night from Lubbock, and I came in last night from Waco.
Yeah. I'm not sure it's spreading the gospel when you're adjudicating. You have to be very creative to spread the gospel with the adjudicating, but it can be done.
He can.
Sure can.
Mr. Gibson, did you know my friend Rick Miller?
Yes, sir.
So when I was out on the road for Caldwell Music way back when, he was my supervisor, and he would help me at contests because as a young guy, I didn't have a very good inside face. I'd hear
Yeah.
things, and he said, "Listen, one of the things we like to say is, out of all the bands I heard today, yours is one of them."
That is correct. That is correct.
And I think Mr. Lunny has a great list floating around somewhere of
Oh, I do have a
great
good
things
list. Yeah.
adjudicators can write down.
But I can't say them on this podcast. 'Cause
Okay.
some directors will pick up on it.
Yeah. This
Well,
podcast
guys,
needs to stay above board here.
Yeah, we'll try.
Yeah.
We'll try.
we have had a couple conversations. One of them, man, great response. So thank you so much, Mr. Gibson. They've gotten really good as far as people listening. Good response. We talked about how setting up your band hall is actually an activity that lends itself to a successful band program. And then we followed it with a conversation about don't blow off warm-ups and tuning. Don't take roll, Mr. Lenny, while the band's warming up.
That's right.
There's something
I was
important
chewed
going
out for
on
that.
here.
Big time.
But as we move forward in that conversation, guys, what do you think is the next important thing that we should talk about relative to this series of podcasts that we're doing?
Well, I really think in terms of maybe continuing with the setup of the band hall, just making sure that I like to have one kid per stand. And I know some schools don't have the budget money and the equipment to do that. But to me, that makes a big difference to have
Sure.
one kid, one stand, one folder, so they can adjust how they play according to how they set their stand and they're not contorted and leaning over and slouching and so forth.
Well, and it is not just an ego thing, but it'd be nice if they watched you every once in a while. And if you got
Yeah, that
three people on
helps.
a
That does
stand
help.
and they're looking this way and you're over there,
That's exactly right. And I think a big one, and I bet Anthony runs into this a lot when he clinics as well, is you go into clinic a band and all the stands are as low as they can be.
Mhm.
You know, so you're looking at the band and they're looking up in the air at you, if they do look, and then they'll look down at their music and then kind of go back and forth, their head going up and down to see you. So just getting it set up to where, when I look at them, the lowest thing I want to see is their nose. When I look at them, I don't want to see anything below their nose with where the stand is, so we get the stand up. So what do you think?
I think as nice a nose as I have, I'm glad that you want to just see at least my nose. I mean,
It is an impressive,
no,
it is an impressive nose, Anthony.
no, yeah, thank you. No, I agree. I mean, there's just got to be communication with eyes. I mean, that's the key. And as much as what they see is how they react. So, I mean, that's the first step. If they can see the nuances of conducting, that's what's funny. Band directors are like, man, they can't see me, so they conduct bigger. And next thing you know, you're like a drum major doing 4 foot. No, dude, just the opposite.
Yeah.
If you want them to watch, make your gestures in conducting smaller. And then, boy, that's a fun game to play.
Yeah.
And
That's an excellent
one
point.
little, and if they don't start, you go, let's get a little bit more focus. And then when they go, and then I've even gone to the point where I don't even do a gesture and I just go, and the band plays.
That's right.
If they're watching and they're focused, we all take a breath and they start together. Isn't that funny?
Cool.
That is
That's
cool.
a little bit of an extreme, but that's what we're about is extreme.
Oh yeah. Yeah. That's exactly
If
right.
they can do that in a rehearsal, they can do it on a stage any day.
So we've got a bunch of little Kilroy looks for old people. They'll
Yeah.
understand. And I'm just going to ask this question as you move on. If I don't know, am I putting brass bells into the stand? I mean, are we using that as a buffer per se? Or,
For
I mean,
me,
if you
it
set the
depends
stand the
on
way you're
the
talking about.
players. Yeah, it depends on the players because I know I see bands will set up the woodwinds and like arcs, and they'll put the brass players on risers, and then they'll actually tilt their stand to the side so the bell can come out. Um, and that's perfectly fine, but you'd better have some pretty good brass players that can control what they're doing. And
Control.
yeah, and I've always kind of used the idea. I like to have my brass playing through a lot of bodies.
Yeah.
Line them up and crunch in those woodwinds where they're using them as sound baffles
Take the
in
edge
front of them.
off.
Yeah.
Or you have that trombone player that has a nuclear sound and you have to build a brick wall in front of it just because. But yeah, I do see that a lot when I'm clinicking or doing an all region band, and you'll hear this individual sticking out, and you look back and this kid is just working so hard and he's got his horn way up, and it's like and that fixes the balance. It fixes a lot. Yeah. So
Yeah.
where you are can fix where your bell is aiming.
Yeah.
Can make a big difference without a doubt.
And I like to think of it as I don't want to be able to see down their bell.
I don't want to see all the way to
Yeah.
the tonsils.
Yeah.
I don't want to see that either.
See their tongue going
Oh, or hanging out of the bell. Yeah.
hanging out of the bell.
No, it's all good.
Yeah. But the
So
other thing
there's
about stand height is it really does, this is my opinion, but it really does affect like flute tuning.
Mm.
Because if the stand heights are low, the flutes are all going to dip down. And then we complain about how they drop the end of the phrase and whatever. And it's amazing if you just raise their stand and all of a sudden they raise their nose a little bit. And all of a sudden it's like, oh my gosh, they're playing better in tune. It's not a fix all,
No,
but it sure helps.
it helps.
Yeah.
But we preach so much on posture when we're teaching kids, and then that stand height probably affects your posture quite a bit, just like you're talking about. Are you slumping down? Are you
Oh,
sitting
yeah.
up? Are you
Yeah.
just basic things? But maybe it's fun to talk about it out loud every once in a while.
Yeah, yeah, and we get kinda blind to it as a band director. We see a kid sit a certain way, and the stands are situated a certain way, and we don't make a big deal about it because we get kinda used to it, you know? It's, and that's why we need to bring someone else in, just a friend or something. Even the custodian, you know, when the janitor can look and go, "That doesn't look right. Is that kid okay?"
I was a custodian as a band director. I mean, that was
Yeah,
part of
that's,
it.
yeah.
It's part of the
My
resume.
first job, I had to mow the yard.
Oh,
Isn't it funny? That was part of my,
or
other duties as assigned.
or strap your feet, the diesel.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I had to fix my own field, but I also had to mow the front yard because I had a band director house.
That's
Throckmorton, Texas provided the house, and they had a riding mower, and my job was to mow my yard, and they'd let me use their mower, and then I'd have to run some swaths over. So you do what you got to do, man. You
That's
do what you
right.
got to do.
Cool. So stand height, got it. Posture, got it. Make us more successful.
Yeah, and then we come to the fun stuff. To me, that's the logistical stuff. That's like washing dishes, and we want our dishes clean. But no one likes to wash dishes. And so we've got all that out of the way. We got stand heights, we got the band hall set up, we've done the things we're supposed to do to the best of our ability. And then it comes down to the fundamental of the first attack.
Mm.
So why don't you jump onto that? The first attack of a note.
Well, it's funny in the last couple of years doing clinics and I see kids a lot. Well, it's a human nature thing. Somebody new's in front of you, you're gonna get them to play, and they've never played in front of you. It kind of is a contest setting, so there's tension in their shoulders, and they're waiting, and they take some little short chipping breath, and it's a very bad sound. So
Mhm.
sometimes I will just briefly. I like to start with a 2 count breath
Okay.
and just get them to relax and even say, exhale. You don't have to tell them. You just do it, and kids are gonna follow it. So
Yeah,
they'll
I'll follow you.
relax and blow that bad air out, in with the good air, and play that first note. And I find myself doing that a lot, especially when that first note just is an explosion,
Yeah.
So, when I'm working with groups and you can see that tension immediately, it's just, let's do a 2 count breath, and they don't even blink an eye, and they just go, and it works.
Yeah.
No explosion.
And I
That's
think
awesome.
that's absolutely brilliant. Yeah.
The psychology of sales, they teach you that as you're talking to people and you want a positive answer, if you nod your head and you make positive movements, the people just tend naturally ape what you do.
Yeah.
And the
Yeah.
agreements, same thing in that breath. That's cool. People are going
And you
to
can,
mimic what
of
you do.
course, then move from a 2-count breath and you have 1-count breath.
Yeah. Cool.
But yeah, I'm on a ballad or chorales, which hopefully someday we'll get to because I am a disciple of playing chorales. Um, but the fact that you'll blow that bad air out, come in and release the air is huge for the first note because you're going to get quality sound. And if you don't, that's just been my observation.
Oh, yeah, I think that's right on the money, and I think sometimes directors shy away from doing some sort of breathing exercise because they think it takes time or, there's the whole breathing gym thing with
Yeah,
all the DVDs and the downloads, and that's awesome, but like you said, you could do what you just did once a day.
every day.
Every day. And the kids would be so much better for it. And I think the other idea to throw in on top of that is the idea that younger kids, to me especially, they like to take a deep breath if you can get them to breathe deeply, but then they hold their breath like they're jumping in the pool.
Right.
And it needs to be like dribbling a basketball. The air comes in and immediately it bounces out of your body. There's never a time you close off your throat and hold the air inside your body. And little kids, to me, are the worst about that.
And for the record, like you say, just about everything, there's someone has gone through a process that is super analytical. But I'm going to tell you from my experience, I do what works for me and my kids.
Right.
And that is how quick I may just touch on certain areas just to get them relaxed. But if you're going to play even in a march, it'll be a quicker breath, let's say. But on a ballad, a chorale, which is on one of these
Yeah,
lists,
it's on one of these lists. Yeah.
that's the beginning of the start of a note. And again, I don't use the word attack. Well, when we have to go to war, I use the word attack, but not in an instrument. I use release the air instead of tongue. Don't tongue so hard.
Yeah.
Just breathe in and let the tongue release the air.
Yeah.
And the sound starts. So that way there's not this explosion at the beginning of the note. And boy, that's easy to isolate.
Yeah. Yeah. You can figure it out pretty quick. I've got to tell you a real quick little story. I went over to Jim Ned High School, which congratulations to them. They made their sweepstakes.
Right.
And I was working with them. And then I go, right here, we need to have a tone, a tone. And all the kids go, Mr. Gibson. Because he's worked them. And that's kind of Anthony's thing is, and I did it on purpose. I go, tone. You need a good tone. And I go, Mr. Gibson.
Yeah, well, at least they know
He's
if
famous.
some-
He's famous.
it's not for my good looks.
That's right.
Okay.
Yeah. But yeah, I think, we talk about fundamentals and whether some people actually believe in what's called advanced fundamentals, and there's no really such thing. You know what I mean? There's just fundamentals, and
Yeah,
pretty much is how you start a note, how you sustain a note, how you end a note,
right,
and what you do with the note during the sustain. And that's it.
right.
That's every fundamental in one thing. So sometimes I get into all this. Let's go to line 1A, option 4, and we're going to work on this advanced fundamental. No, we're just like you said, we're not doing anything but starting a note,
Well,
sustaining a note, and ending a note.
the best people to observe are their peers. And so once the band starts listening and you say, let's have the trombones play the first note, boom. And it's not isolating kids, but you just say, who had an explosive tongue? And they all turn around
Full point.
to the one person. And I go, and it's fixed. Now,
Yeah.
some people say, well, you just can't do that. That's singling a kid out. But our whole goal is to get to where we play as an ensemble. And if they don't know they're doing it, we need to point that out so that they can refine that. And it's a lot better their peers doing it
Yeah.
than us. We're just, oh yeah, he's just picking on me. But boy, when your friend goes, you're tonguing so hard,
Yeah. They'll turn on each other like
Absolutely.
convicts, man.
But you know
But
what,
it's
though? There's a certain level of autonomy to that, and that's a positive thing. That's
Absolutely.
their
Oh, yeah.
band, and they're correcting their band because they want their band to sound good.
Yeah. And Anthony Gibson is like the king of band culture. So he can pull that off really well, where the
That
kids
was-
don't feel like they're being put on the hot seat. It's
Right.
more of a jovial thing. It's like, hey guys, someone's not playing with a good sound. Y'all point at them.
Yeah, exactly.
Instead of who's not playing with a good sound.
But a lot of my band related to athletics because I didn't know if I was going to be a band director or
Yeah.
coach. And so it ended up, well, they say you're a band coach, but
Yeah.
the fun part about people coming in early or making a bad sound, you just relate it right back to football. And whoever jumps off sides, they don't go, oh, it's okay. Right tackle. If you can imagine when they go back to the huddle after they backed up 5 yards, do you
Yeah.
think they're going, it's okay, Bubba? Man, I'll bet you that there is some talk going on, and that guy is not going to jump off sides. So, what do we do in band when we jump off sides? Somebody comes in early.
Sharing
If they're
those,
not, it's not in sync. So, if anybody kind of does a whine and a tear rolls up, I go, do you think they do that in football? No, sir. Okay, we move on. It
So
is a team. It's a team sport, man.
just to
Well, I got
as
to
a
tell
direct
you a funny story about Austin Lunny, my son. He played middle linebacker. Okay. And literally, I'm watching the game, and some kid on defense on the line jumped over, encroachment. And my son ran up to him. Of course, it doesn't hurt because I got helmets, but he popped him on the back of the head. He goes,
Yeah.
and then went back to his, and the kid's like, okay. Sometimes,
Wake
we
up.
need a little peer leadership. The coach kind of leans forward. He goes, Austin Lunny took care of it.
Needs some care of it.
I'm old enough that back in the day, talking about the offsides penalty, they didn't call out individuals in college athletics when they called a penalty. They just said the offense or the defense, and that's probably easier if nobody everybody's going, it was you. But then they moved to actually calling out the number of the individual
Right. Oh, yeah.
that made the infraction, and that probably makes you a little more conscious of personal
Right.
activities and
And
blending
it's
in
not and it's not a humiliation situation. It's just a fact.
Yeah, it's a
Right.
growth situation.
And you
Right.
can do better. And that's where
Right.
the encouragement comes in. Yeah. I don't know how we got off on that, but we're into football.
We are. Everything in Texas finally devolves into football.
Third
So
and short, never
we're
play
talking
a
about
national.
attacks, but do you have to be careful with your balance when you're talking about teaching them attacks or releasing
Oh,
the
yeah.
note?
Jump on that, Anthony. Go for it.
You have to think about all of it every time
Yeah.
you play every note. Where
True,
am
but
I going to fit in with the others?
if we're defining all the things, balance
Mhm.
certainly is one of them, especially in that situation.
Oh, how it is interesting. And like I say, I'll go back to speaking of attacks. You want everybody to match. That's a word I use all the time. If you match the articulation, match the front of the note, if you match the release, then it sounds like one and everybody's a part of one. But if there's individuals sticking out, that's a problem.
Yeah.
And so that's what you end up addressing. I mean, that's the first thing I do is just finding individuals. We want it to sound as an ensemble or as one. So
Mr.
whatever that
Gibson,
takes.
did you know my junior high director, Tom Dillon? Did you know Tom?
Yes, I did. Very much
So
so.
he used to look at me. I'm a trumpet player, if you didn't know that.
Mhm.
Killon, oh my God, Killon, we don't need Charlton Heston. Match the band.
Yeah. Sounds like Tom. That's funny.
That's a good impression.
But his point being, you're not balancing. So
Yeah.
Yeah.
So if we're doing impressions,
Uh-oh.
y'all I'm just going to let me know if that's great.
Okay, no, yeah.
No,
Yeah, you
that's-
feel free to go full Robin Williams if you need
Oh.
to.
Oh.
And I think a big deal with balance too is, two things. One is they have to hear it in their head before they play.
explain that. What does that mean?
They have to, in their mind, if I say ribeye steak, people know what it tastes like.
You got a
Say
picture.
chocolate ice cream, you know what it tastes like. And
Yeah.
I think to start that first chord and that beautiful balance in a chorale, they have to be able to taste it in their mind first and then replicate that sound when they play. They've got to literally think about what's going to happen. And then the second part of that is just constantly adjust. I would tell kids, it's like driving a car or a bicycle. You don't just get the steering wheel set and just keep it there. You constantly adjust the whole time because of the road, And our band is the road. Our sound is the road. And so we've got to constantly adjust. All of a sudden, if I'm the second trumpet player, I've got to figure out, am I matching her and him? Am I matching the trombones behind me? And it's just a constant battle of trying to create a bunch of little band directors where they're not just waiting for us to tell them what to do, but we've told them how to do it. And now their job is to figure out, what do I need to do it?
That's cool.
But
And it kinda
staying
comes
on
back
that,
to the Go ahead, I'm sorry.
well, just staying on that track, uh, and coming out of, working a lot of clinics and helping bands and judging band, it gets pretty repetitious. I'll say there are 3 parts of the note.
Mhm.
And they're like, "Oh, this is gonna be some huge thing said." It's really not. I mean, I am back to the basics. There's a beginning, middle, and end.
Yeah.
And in this sight reading music that I was listening to, the end of the note, I mean, people would go to the end and choke it off. And that's where I learned over the process. Jim Sudduth was the best. He would just say things like, "Yum." And I mean, we just go, "That works." So for the rest of my life, at the end of the note, you think of the word yum instead of yuck.
Yeah.
And bands will get to, especially if it's unison bands, if it's a full ensemble and they come up to a rest, they just go, "Ta," they choke it off. Whereas I write it up, just let the note ring. You have
Yeah.
to create your own resonance in the note at the end. So it's tone,
There's the tone.
yum. Yeah. Oh man, I say it all the time. But
That's true. It's good.
it sure does make it sound more mature. And young players and a lot of high school kids that don't sit in with old mature players, they really don't know any different. But once they sit in and hear somebody that's a great player and the note has resonance all the way to the end and it's just warm all the way up, that's where you go, "Wow, that was nice. What was it?"
Mhm.
You create your own resonance. So those are just some little things.
Oh,
Don't
yeah.
get me wrong, I could go off on
Little things, but
I'm a
important
little
things.
things.
I'm gonna say this too, though, Mr. Gibson, yes or no? Oh, Anthony, sorry.
Thanks.
That,
If you say
uh,
mister, I'm gonna roll over and die here. Go ahead.
that music's physical. Mike and I have talked about this a bunch. When it's right, you go, "Oh god, that feels good."
Mhm.
And when it's wrong, you don't necessarily always know until someone shares why it
Right.
doesn't feel right. It just doesn't feel right. But when you
So
make good music,
that's right. Once you have it right, you stop and say, "That was it. Do it again." And everybody listen. Or my favorite is, I can see your eyes. Everybody in the room once that sound is a quality tonal sound, everybody just kinda goes, all the tension in their shoulders just like, "Ah."
Yeah.
And I go, "Don't you feel better?"
Yeah.
Yeah, let's do that from now on. And
and it
it's
goes back to Mike's mental picture of what there's your steak or,
true.
there's your ice cream as far as the music's concerned. That's the picture I want you to ingrain in there.
Yeah.
And I
Good
have the
stuff.
Gibsonisms that I've been accused of, but I always say yum versus yuck.
Yeah.
And it's just like,
Oh,
okay,
like
we
that.
can do that. Yuck's pretty
Yeah.
abrasive. But yeah, it's been fun to go through the season and just hear different philosophies, and every time I learn, but you still go back to that fundamental of quality sound. You've got quality at the beginning, quality at the end, and quality at the release.
Mhm.
Those are the great sounds. That's one
So
note.
here's me. Go ahead.
Yeah, but
I don't
that's
mean to
just
interrupt you.
one note. Then we play many notes after that. But you go
So,
back to the
but
fundamental.
but we've been talking about release of the sound. We've talked a little bit about balance. What's it help a guy who never actually taught? What's the difference between balance and blend? What what because I skipped ahead and looked, and you're going to talk about blend at some point. Is that not just balance?
It's different to me.
It's different, but they're certainly in the same clan.
Yes,
They're
they are.
from the same
They are
family of yeah.
Okay.
Um,
And so is tuning. Tuning's the sister.
that's true.
It's all together. To me, blend is more making the timbre or sound of my instrument match the people around me, and balance is more a volume of how strong or soft I play in
Okay.
perspective or relation to the people
So
around me.
balance is our faders on the mixer,
Yeah.
and blend might be the EQ.
Yes. Oh man, I'm gonna use that.
Good. Note to self.
Let me write that down. That's how, because kids understand that. They do.
Mhm.
Yeah. But that is that because you can have bands that balance quote balance, but they don't really blend.
Right.
And I've heard bands blend and they don't at all balance. It's kind of the mixture of the two. Yeah.
So balance might be volume and blend is the quality of the sound?
Yeah.
Not as black and white, but that's
Yeah, that's
a good place to start. I keep going back to there's a resonance in the sound that is obvious when the note you stop and you can just hear it and feel it ring in wherever you are, even if it's the Sahara Desert
Mhm.
dry, but there'll still be that tone.
Yeah.
And I even have gotten so guttural that I have to say we have to create our own resonance.
That's right.
And there's where at the end of the note, instead of it just choked off, you get that whole sound and you can hear the sound of that note in the silence.
Yeah, and to me, not only within our own instrument, but you'll hear a band, and I'll actually do this with them. I'll say, "Okay, we're going to release this last note of this beautiful piece incorrectly, so you
Right.
can hear it incorrect."
Mhm.
So tubas and euphoniums cut off just a millisecond early, and trumpets, flutes, and clarinets and saxes cut off just a millisecond, barely perceptible, too late, and then mid range horns, altos just cut off right when I cut you off. And then they'll do it. I'll say, this is how 90% of the bands sound at a contest.
Mhm.
And then I'll have them do it and they go, oh, because it just kind of goes, and the sound just stops it. Now reverse the process. Low voice is just a millisecond, barely perceptible. Just hang over just a hair. Trumpets, flutes, clarinets, cut off just a millisecond early. French horns, I like to put them in the category of low brass
Mm.
for the release point because they're the heart and passion of a band. And then you have them do it and they all go, oh my God. Because even in the band hall it goes, whoosh, 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 whoosh.
Yeah,
It resonates. And that's okay. Now do it wrong.
that's right.
Quack. Do it right. Whoosh, 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 whoosh. And so they have to understand what's wrong in order to do it right. But it works. And I think I started learning this lesson when I was a freshman at Iowa Park. I battled my way to second chair. I thought I was a stud.
Nice.
But Lee Gwynn was my senior. We were assigned seniors. He was first chair trumpet. And he leaned over after the first rehearsal and he goes, "This works a lot better if you quit trying to play louder than me because I'm the better player." Yes, sir, Mr. Gwynn. But he was right because I was asserting my dominance. I'm just going to play louder than Lee because I'm the man, and he asserted his dominance. And this works better if you quit trying to play louder than everybody in the section. Oh, yes, sir. So that was my first lesson in balance.
Players, hey, hello, I'm better than you,
Right.
sir. Just you're all the same. No, but that whole tonal sound though is and understand that even if it's a low, very I heard it, they don't know exactly what it is.
Mhm.
It'll change the whole sound of a band.
Oh yeah, no doubt. And I think you have to train their ears to listen for it. And something real simple that I did that I was told to do it by a mentor said, if band starts at 8:15, about 7:45, kick on kinda low key, just some nice pretty band recordings in the band hall where the kids are out there. Yeah, like they never sit out there, at least my band hall, they didn't sit out there and practice. They were eating Pop-Tarts and getting ready for band. They were just visiting. So y'all see you put a little Percy Granger on and just enough where it's like ambiance. And it kinda starts to soak into their brainstem of that's what a good band sounds like. Now, did we ever sound like the University of Michigan? No, but we got closer every day.
Right.
Every day we got a little closer, but I really believe that if you wanna show someone how to swim, you got to throw them in the water and you got to show them how to swim. You can't explain it to them,
Right.
kind of moment. So I think that helps because kids don't hear uh, symphonic music. Growing up, and I'll just say myself, John Williams and all those, using full symphony orchestras for soundtracks, that's relatively unusual. Now it's like electronic soundtracks and pop music, and nothing wrong with that, but the kids don't have this total diet being shoved upon them of symphonic literature. And we had that just in movie soundtracks and TV. We heard it all the time, and kids don't hear that anymore. So we've got to provide that for them.
But even more than that, as a trumpet player, I talk about what I know. When I was younger, we had Herb Alpert, we had Chuck Mangione, we had
Mhm.
mainstream people playing our instrument
It was on the
accessible
radio.
that everybody listened to, and they all knew it. And
Yeah.
you're right. When, was it 76, 77 when Star Wars came out?
Oh my
And
gosh.
those
It was
big
great.
sounds that the London group was making, we were all like, "Ah, that sounds really good." And we had a picture. But, and nothing against anybody. I don't know that there's that many live instruments left in popular music
There's not.
beyond sequencing and keyboards.
Right.
But um, to your point, Mike, absolutely, you got to have some example. And I think we've said this. We had a guest that said, "Have you played it for him?" And
Oh,
that's
man.
something that Mike says all the time in our listening sessions. Have you played an example of what you want them to sound like? So at least they have a reference point somewhere.
Mhm.
So
Okay, I'm going to
I,
step into guttural closure to this topic.
Okay.
For decades, even back when we had cassette players, I would find my contest students and I would find the best recording that I wanted us to model. Notice I didn't say do it exactly, but this is the one I would model. And if you're doing a transcription, let's say, I would do
Get the orchestra.
I would do a great band, but maybe at the end I would put a great symphony playing it. So when they were rehearsing and the kids are smart, they're looking for, what am I trying to model? They could go back and hear a terrific college band, or they could go hear this unbelievable symphony playing it. And then we come back in and, it was in Lubbock at Coronado. I had these great all-state clarinet players.
Well, Carol Britton Chambers.
Well, and yeah,
Wasn't she in your band?
yeah, she's
Yeah.
a trumpet player, but
Okay.
clarinet players.
Yeah.
With the hardest part for those is that they're trying to make string sounds, and so they would listen to violins and viola sounds in that music, and then they could play, and it was pretty neat because it's at our fingertips. Nowadays, you don't have to make a cassette or send them all a CD.
Yeah,
You just put it on there and say, "Go pull this up, listen to this recording," and they're going to come back and they've done it.
Yeah.
That's their assignment.
Or nowadays, throw the link in a Google Drive,
Yeah,
Google
exactly.
Classroom. They just and
That's their.
will every kid pull it up and listen? No, but enough will.
You're right.
Enough will.
You're
And
exactly right.
then they start to geek out on you. Then they start bringing you recordings.
Yes, I
And
know.
they start sending, "Hey, have you heard this one, Mr. Lenny?"
Exactly.
But I try to explain it to my students with that's how we learn to speak.
Mhm.
My grandsons, when they were learning to speak, we did not hand them a book.
make these
we
sounds.
we talk to them. That's why we talk with the accent and dialects we talk with. We use our ears and we listen and we emulate, and that's all music is. It's emulating. I think probably talking was probably the first music.
And kids will emulate whatever cuss words you say.
Oh yeah.
Thump your toe.
Oh yeah. I've gotten in trouble with that with my daughter-in-law. Mike, did you say this in front of Kaysen?
Yeah, exactly.
I'm sorry, Brenna.
No.
Why
I
do you
think we-
ask?
Yeah.
Why do you ask? No, Kaysen taught me that one. I always try to save my son and just take the blame.
I think modeling is
Oh God, yes.
is a great example.
And pulling up your own instrument.
That's correct.
It doesn't matter what you play, whether it's flute, trombone, tuba. I would play portions for them, and that way they could hear what I want. A picture's worth 1,000 words moment. I want this to be articulated like this. Listen to it. Copy. Listen. And to me, that's not learning by rote. That's teaching style.
Right.
As teaching style. Now, if I said, "Hey, trumpets, measure 4 goes like this," and I just did that continuously for every section of the band, that's a terrible road to go down. But if there's one measure that they just can't get in that John Mackey piece, man, I'd pull out my trumpet and play that measure. So I play 4 counts rest, you play, set the met and go. And just make them. And I would teach that one measure basically by rote, because sometimes that has to happen. And then if that measure pops up again, they know.
Right. Because it's coming
Yeah.
up again, and you're teaching a style for them to emulate every time they see it.
Yes, yes. And
rote is a real good friend of called practice.
practice. Yeah.
We use it's
Yeah.
whatever you want to call it, but
And I'll tell my band director friends out there that if you really want to get the attention of your band, pick up your instrument and play, because they're waiting for you to make a mistake. They will listen intently. every whisper will stop in the band hall as soon as you start playing because they're like, "Whoa, are they going to screw up?" And then all of a sudden they're listening to you. So justify. I know band directors are kind of saying, "Oh, I'm kind of afraid to do that. I don't want to waste time." I don't think it's wasting time. On the warm ups, play the lip slurs and have them copy you. Uh,
Right.
monkey see, monkey do. You know what I mean?
Gary Garner was the master,
Oh God.
and the WT concept is still just unbelievable. He would clinic. I just remember him clinicking my bands, and he would just reach down, grab his flute, and play the euphonium line
Oh yeah.
perfectly the way he wanted it, and I would just, as a tuba player, I wasn't sure I could pick it up and play the piccolo part
Yeah.
as
I can't
well,
do that.
but the concept is there without doubt.
Yes.
I must say that as I grew older, I would look over and say, "Clarinets, Becca, would you please play that so the euphoniums know what this should sound like?"
That's a good point.
And have a student who's just playing it terrific, and then the kids are real engaged. I like that because it brings out those great players in your group to do
Mhm.
it. So I was notorious for that at the end.
That's cool.
Yeah, but that's also a testament to where you'd gotten your bands to, that you had people that you could do that with.
Oh, without a doubt.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
So,
without
my
a
friend
doubt.
Panomata and several people I've seen since, they got those wind sticks because they didn't want to, as he didn't want to play his saxophone all the time and color that sound in a saxophone way for everybody else. But on his little wind stick, the Yamaha thing, it was just the note, and he could play it in style. There's all kinds of tricks out there. That just hit me when you were saying that.
Yeah.
Having sat through several of Dr. Garner's rehearsals
Yeah.
in college,
Yeah.
no doubt
He's a
he knew
master.
exactly what he wanted it out of every instrument and knew their part and how it should sound.
Yeah. I saw.
And he still does. He's
Yeah.
an amazing
Right.
guy.
Yeah. I was going to say, I just saw a picture on social media of him clinicking, I think Canyon
Yeah.
up in Amarillo, and he's in his 90s now, but he's up on the podium and he's got his flute up. Yeah. And it's he's the Energizer Bunny of.
I mean,
It was
Still
fun
does
for
his thing.
me. We went to the 5A honor band concert at TMEA this year. For everybody outside of Texas, that's our Texas Music Educator Association big clinic conference convention, and we went to listen to the 5A honor band. Dr. Garner was attending, and it was just Dr. Garner walked in, and it was a so this
Mhm.
hive of people everywhere he went,
absolutely.
just
His
listening to him and
entourage.
talking to. It's fun. It was fun.
That is cool.
Okay,
I think the next thing we always address, once we get past all that, would be tuning. It's not that tuning should not be the first concern, but in my humble opinion, tuning cannot exist until you have balance, blend, and tone quality. And I want Anthony to go through he's got a really cool system I've seen him utilize, working intonation with a band. So if you wouldn't mind kind of going through that, having the one kid play, then they match,
Yeah,
the clarinet.
and I think it's because when I go in and rehearse a band or work a band, it's like, okay, you've got 2 hours. We want there to be miracles happen. And I'm like, whoa, this, uh,
I'm a musician, not a magician.
yeah, it's raining,
Damn it, Jim.
and I
Star
could not
Trek.
walk across that puddle of water. It was just like, I stood there, well, but due to time, I just kind of got into whoever the principal clarinet player is, play me your G, which isn't their best note, but that's a note that everybody plays a lot more than any other note.
Yeah.
They play their G, they play it in tune. Students are responsible for pitch, but this is more of a tuning exercise. And then I will have the second chair clarinet play and match it. And as the entire room of kids are listening, and if it matches, everybody does this, but if it doesn't, you see this a lot. And it puts that pressure because those two clarinets are gonna probably play an open G somewhere
Yeah.
in there. And then once it's matched, everybody nods, and it's kind of that respectful performer look. And then the third chair comes in. And if they're in, again, you start building these different sounds on that one note. And then we add the next. And if it's out of tune, I look over at the band and they go, dude, that speaks volumes,
Yeah, it does.
But then, that's just the first time. But man, I started rehearsal that way just because what we're going to play in most music. So
Mhm.
I go through every one of the clarinets and we build those F concerts, that G all the way around, and it sounds like one. I mean, think of all the things you get to do with that. The resonance, you get the intonation, you get all of the balance that's going to happen, and when it sounds like one. And once we get through there, I just say first chairs, and the rest of the band will play their F concert. And so it's
Mhm.
very exposed. There's one person, and then I do it just so they'll have something after they kind of get there going, and then I just start doing this, and after 3, I just go, everybody come in,
Yeah.
but they just come in individually, so they get to hear their sound in their session with the full ensemble, and man, there's pushing and pulling and adjusting,
Yeah.
but once they get that resonance, they've built it. You don't add somebody to the mix and go, "I wonder if somebody's out of tune," because everybody comes in individually, and if they're out of tune, everybody
Yeah.
knows it. And you can stop and go, "What are you here, band?" They point to that baritone player, and he goes, "Oh, someone pushed all my slides in.
Yeah.
What a funny joke."
And
You
the
know?
really
That's it.
cool part about that technique is the fact that, unlike taking a tuner and saying, "Play, push in, pull out, play, push in," one kid's engaged while you do that at a 45 or 50 or 60. The way Anthony's doing it, every kid in the band is kinda listening and going, 'cause
That
now they're trying to figure it out, so when it comes their turn, they know that, "Oh, yeah, okay," and then as soon as they play, it's like, "Oh, I'm flat," you know, I've got they start moving their slides or whatever, but, so many times you'll see directors, and I'm not saying that's a bad thing to ever do, but if you go down the line, one tuner with a tuner, one kid at a time, or the kids pass a tuner down the section, that's one kid engaged, everyone else is going, "Wonder what we're having for lunch."
Yeah.
They are, "Who am I gonna take to
But it goes
coach?"
fast, and not only are you addressing, just back to what we were just discussing, not only are you addressing pitch, but then you're addressing balance, you're
Mhm.
addressing blend, you're addressing quality of sound.
Even attack.
Absolutely.
You know,
And if a
kid
kid
comes
comes
in
in
with
and they
a
explode,
20-pound tongue.
that's
That's like,
that's a good
"Whoa."
point. That's a great point.
Yeah.
That exercise also keeps them from having, Godzilla tongues, and
Yeah.
just come in with, we want tone first, not
Yeah.
the tongue.
Yeah. And I've stolen that from Anthony, by the way, so and I thought, "Man, that's brilliant." So I started doing it at clinics, and of course, I took credit for it. I didn't give you any
You
credit,
do.
Anthony.
You have no idea all the things my Pete, loony?
Yeah, that's right.
No,
I've been called worse.
but let's go back to, though, that will take time the first time. But after the first week of that, it goes by quick, and kids are responding faster. And if you're doing an all-region band, you don't have time to go through all that. I mean, you just have that.
Yeah.
It's kind of like we do it from an orchestra instead of the oboe playing an A and everybody, find out. It's the same concept,
Yeah.
but I want that clarinet player to be my band sound that we all match. And then when the oboe comes in, sometimes oboes can, open a can of beans from 50 paces with that sound. And if you can just keep them inside the ensemble sound, once that happens, there's a lot of things that I've just found that it's their listening. So
Yeah.
it's been kind of fun. And you go, where did you read that in a book? I didn't. It just over time, it just evolves how that works.
The
Just things like this.
Yeah. Just
Talk
But
picked
give
it
a
up somewhere.
secondary benefit of that I think is so cool, and I brought it up before, is you're giving them the responsibility of being in tune instead of being the bad guy with the tuner going, "No,
That's
no,
right.
you're
You're
wrong."
right.
When
Exactly.
everybody else in the room goes, "No, you're wrong." You're not the bad guy.
And they're all
That's
listening. They're
Your
all listening.
tuner is speaking of tuners, somebody goes, "Yeah, no more phones in our rehearsals," and I'm like, "Okay, what if that's their tuner?"
Yeah.
But, tuners are for if you just really don't know, it'll give you an idea, or they're for certain to be used at home as you develop
Yeah.
and practice it. They may say, "I don't wanna practice all that piece." Well, then practice those 3 notes.
Yeah. That chord at 32
That's right.
in Arabian dance.
Whittle it down to the least common denominator that you can get better and go home and practice it. And there's you a time saver. Somebody go, "Oh, everybody practice an hour." I never practiced an hour in my life. But I went home and said, or went to the practice room and said, I can't play this measure, and I would
both
share
figured
that out and then go back out. I mean,
Yeah.
I think
life's
tuners are
too
great
short.
when I'm trying to figure out my third slide. How far does it need to go? I think
I'm
tuners are
slide
great
your
when
smooths.
I'm
Yeah.
if I'm on
But you're
fourth
right.
space
It's
D
kind
or
of an extreme kind of condition, but we would use tuners every 4 or 5 kids in beginner band. We'd use them as like a tool. And then in
For
junior
sure.
high, we would use them on every stand, every kid clipped up every rehearsal. And some people really looked down upon that, but we thought we felt like we were training their ears. Then in the third high school band, we'd use tuners still. Then the second high school band, but then my top band, the wind ensemble, we never had a tuner in the rehearsal
Mhm.
ever because those kids have been trained for X amount of years, and we just use the harmony keyboard. And we'd hit the drone, and the kids would tune and would do the Anthony Gibson. I call it, let's do the Anthony Gibson.
Oh my gosh.
And we go, okay, first clarinet, match the harmony keyboard. Okay, one more clarinet. As they start entering, I start pulling the volume down on the harmony
Yes.
keyboard. And all of a sudden, it's just the band playing, and we go through. But even the day of contest, it's so beneficial because I think Anthony will attest to this. How many bands have you heard that you can tell when you're judging on stage that in warm up, but they went down the road with a tuner and it was hot in the warm up room?
Absolutely.
And all of a sudden they're just pushing, slide, pulling.
Absolutely.
They're going to extremes of tuning on their instrument. They get on stage, there's a little breeze from the breezeway coming through, and all of a sudden, all you know what breaks loose. You know what I mean? It's like nothing's in tune, and the kids are panicking, and everybody's sweating, and the judges are sweating, and it's cold, but we're sweating a flop sweat.
Yeah.
That there's how do we fix this? The goal is don't do that. Find that one clarinet.
Just a tool.
It's just a tool.
And I've seen kids
Yeah.
though that think, I just don't know if I'm sharp or flat. And I am very thankful that we have that tool.
Yes.
But most of the time, it's a teaching opportunity. If you're not sure if it's sharp or flat, then do what the tendency is, and that's where you you teach tendencies. If the tendency is for that note to be real sharp, first thing to do is pull the note down, and if it got worse,
Yeah.
you went the wrong way, and then just push it
Yeah.
up, adjust, and you're going. So you've got to make a decision,
Yeah.
and then when
That's
everybody's
a good
in,
point.
life is good.
Yeah.
All on the same page, all on the same pitch.
And I think sometimes, especially younger directors, not to throw them under the bus, but sometimes I feel like they want to beat the notes out of the band, and then they don't realize that 90% of making a first division is balance, tuning, blend, and maybe a little bit of style. And I've even written on a critique sheet, or nowadays typed because we do it on computer, that this band plays so pretty that even your wrong notes sound good.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Here's your first division. And there's other bands that played every note technically with the right fingering
Sterile.
and the right rhythm. Yeah, and sterile, like it's a surgical operation.
Yeah.
And then it's like, then you're on the fence. You're going, well, that they kind of played the right notes, but nothing sounded good. Kids sticking out, whatever. So they played technically correct, and then then it becomes a 2 or a 3. So it's I think they just need to realize that the thing they hate working on, I think, is for directors a lot of times is tuning and balance and blend because it takes a lot of mental energy. It's easier to turn on the Met and get a flute cleaning rod and pound the heck out of a music stand and get them to move their fingers in time. It's
so
hard to get them to think.
Mike, Anthony, we talked about doing all this, and a lot of what we talked about has just been kind of a one note approach. Make that one note sound great, or make that note in tune, or make that note. But it do you just extend that thought when you're getting into phrases and when you're getting into creating the actual uh, melodic content of what you're doing? I mean, is phrasing just a natural extension of what we're talking about?
I think it's a natural extension, but phrasing for young people is not natural until you make it
Oh,
natural.
speak
It's
Yoda.
not natural. They have no idea. It's like giving them the keys to the Lamborghini. They have no idea how to make a phrase unless they've had other music education. They might have had a great piano teacher, but they really don't know. To me, the most common 2 mistakes in phrasing, 3 mistakes, I would say. Some people think phrasing is just where you breathe.
No.
It's the
And that's the
breath mark in the
tiniest,
music.
tiniest part. In fact, a lot of times, if you're phrasing things correctly, there's kids, you ask them to breathe in awkward places to make the phrasing work. The other one is the overachiever syndrome, I call it. They see a crescendo, so they just immediately play loud. They see a decrescendo, they immediately play soft because they know it's supposed to get softer, so they don't really do it gradual. And the third thing is the rule of uh, most of your crescendo should be in the last portion of the time allotted. So if you have 8 counts to crescendo, most of your crescendo should really be 5, 6, 7, 8. It should not be 1, 2, 3, 4. And on decrescendo, you maintain that level where you entered the decrescendo. If you have 8 counts, you stay there for at least 2 counts, and then you decrescendo a little bit, then quite a bit on the last 4 counts. And if you can convince the kids to do that the first time they do it, they go, "Oh my gosh, that was cool." And I'll give you a really awesome example. Sight reading.
Oh, man.
I judged 31 bands in 2 days, and there was one band, and there were some really good bands. Academy, the Bees, their mascot's the Bees. But they played, and I actually wrote on the sheets that, this is the there've been a lot of great bands come through this room today, so this is the only band that your crescendos moved me. In sight reading,
Mhm.
oh my
Right.
gosh, because they just boom, is just gorgeous. A 3A band that's a good band program. But yeah, I would just say that phrasing can cover up a lot of mistakes.
Oh, man.
A band that phrases well can cover up a lot of mistakes,
Well,
but
I wanna
go for it.
close this portion with I just go back to the most common because you hear bands and they don't phrase, and then you say, and I write on sheets, phrase you either have to play 4 measure or 8 measure phrases. End of story. That's where I would start. Now, if
Yeah.
you go outside that, great, but you gotta convince us. And you go crescendo to the 5th
Mhm.
measure, decrescendo. I mean, that's but some of them, and my favorite example is, here's your phrasing band, and when I wake up in a hospital, that's probably not a good time to think, this is
When the beep beep stops.
the beep deep stops and the line is flat. Your music is dead. So, just getting them because sometimes it's back to basics, and I still think that, quite frankly.
Yeah,
Is it 4 measure, 8 measure? Okay. I mean,
yeah.
that's just but kids don't think that you've got to phrase. But
Yeah, and you just gotta be on top of it in terms kids want to breathe where it feels comfortable,
right.
and going to the sight reading, here's a speaking the quiet part out loud on the level 2 is a really well-written sight reading piece, but it's written where it's like a quarter, 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 then it's like quarter, quarter, half. So in 2 measures, there's a half note at the end of every 2 measures almost. So what are kids gonna do naturally? They're gonna
Breathe
suck in air every 2 measures.
everything.
And so the really, really, astute groups and directors, they understood that and they said, "Nope, don't breathe air." But there are a lot of bands, it was every 2 measures, they take a breath, and that didn't cost them a rating, but, it showed a lack of concern for the phrasing, if that makes sense. And for crescendos, the most common I guess, analogy I would give to him said, "Have you ever been on, like, the beach at an ocean or at a lake, even a lake when the water's moving?" Said, "The wave gets bigger as it comes to the shore, but it doesn't get automatically just bigger and just stays. It just slowly gets bigger and bigger and bigger because you can see the swell way out in the ocean, and that little swell all of a sudden turns to a wave, and then finally it white caps over."
You just watched Castaway, didn't
That's
you?
right, yeah.
Okay, yeah.
Wilson.
Wilson! No.
But, kids understand that, they go,
Yeah.
"Oh," and that's how a crescendo does. It doesn't, like, all of a sudden get really big, it just slowly swells, then finally it turns over until it goes to the next part. But, yeah, we've got to do those things correctly, and I started them in beginner band. With my little trumpets, we just wrote in tons of dynamics on those
Mhm.
goofy little beginner band lines, just added the dynamics to it, and that way they start to think about it. They don't do it really well, but they do it well enough that it helps them in 7th grade and in the 8th grade. Yeah.
So let me do me a favor, you guys. Wrap this up for me for our guys that maybe this is not something that they have somebody helping them remember every day. I would say it's important for our directors to not think about this in the middle of a rehearsal, but to go in with a plan, know that these are
Absolutely.
things that they're going to troubleshoot, going to diagnose, maybe even make a index card that lists them so they can remember to go, oh, yeah, we need to make sure we're paying attention to until it becomes Anthony Gibson second nature, until it becomes Mike Lenny. This is what we do. There's so many things when you're first starting that you're just trying to get through 50 minutes, right? Wow, we made it through a rehearsal, victory. But if we have our index card up there to remind us these are the things that we're listening for, this is how we make music. Maybe
Yeah,
no.
well, we're constantly diagnosing problems, and that's the art of being a band director, constantly. And the one thing I'd throw out to younger directors, it's okay to just make a little progress on something and then let it go, because they'll grab 3 measures of clarinet, something or another in the march, and spend 35 minutes working on it, and that's not a good plan. Even though in their mind, "I've just gotta get this worked out." Get it just a little better, and then go, "Okay, let's hear the low brass." And do that every day, just a little bit. All we want is a little progress, so you're not gonna fix everything at one time,
But
so that
I'm going to throw Bill Woods back at you. He said you give music
oh,
to a group of kids, leave them alone, they'll probably make a 2 out of it. They're
yeah,
smart kids. You
Yes.
have to work to get to a 1, you have to work to go the other way sometimes.
yeah,
Yeah.
But I guess the point I'm trying to make is don't just leave it up to them. We have to be intentional as teachers in making
Oh,
sure
yeah.
we're communicating and working on these small things that make us so much better.
yes.
And again, I go back to the basic of whatever's as an ensemble, you go back to one note and you address it with everybody in the band, and then you go back and relate it back to always have that prescription that they don't have to go and get to 5 different pharmacies. Go back to that one note, get your medicine, go back to work, you
Yeah.
know? But, yeah, that's a good point. And a lot of times I've had kids, section leader. I mean, I was big on that. Just section leaders. You meet with your people. You know what, I'll just talk to them or make that happen in your whole section. That when you empower kids, they're going to take it to another level
Yeah.
without a doubt.
Cool. Anything else you throw in there, Mr. Lunny?
No, we'll end with Anthony's words, man. That was really cool.
What
Awesome.
did I say?
I don't know. I just said that to make you feel
Did I
good.
say something?
I will say empower kids because sometimes
That's what
they're
it
a
was.
lot
That's-
smarter than we
Oh,
are.
90% of the time, man, they'll go to A&M, become engineering major,
There you go.
stuck in music.
That's fun.